and Spinmasters, Strategy Club of IIM Sirmaur, welcomes you all to Sampreshan 2.0, the second edition of the Annual Agile Forum of IIM Sirmaur. Sampreshan 2.0 aims to provide the students with an in-depth understanding of strategy and consulting world through valuable interaction with industry leaders, experts, and possible recruiters. The goal is to provide a platform where speakers can share their experiences of the latest trend in the industry of strategy and consulting domain. This year, the theme of the forum is Nowcasting versus Forecasting, Finding Equilibrium. To understand the theme better, let's see a video created in collab with the media cell of IIM Sirmaur.
Please let me know when you see my screen.
We are able to see our screen, sorry.
No voice.
There is no voice.
Let me check first.
Just unmute it.
It's unmuted, sir.
Okay. Maybe some other issue.
Is it audible now?
You are audible.
नहीं है. Okay.
Yeah, the video is not audible.
No, video is not audible. If there's a separate speaker setting of video, probably you could try.
Is it audible?
No, the video is not audible. In fact, now the video has lag as well.
Yeah.
No worries, we can share the link of the video in the chat box. We have uploaded the video on YouTube as well, so from there everyone can have a sneak peek of it. So now
you can run the video without sound. I think we'll understand.
Okay. So now we will commence our much awaited panel discussion. So the topic for the first panel is redefining the strategy for the Gen Z market. In today's rapidly changing world of Gen Z, we have realized that to build a resilient organization, agility has to be a core component of the organization. An organization's agility derives from its ability to adapt to market fluctuations and demands by finding the right problem to solve. While this redefining of strategies might be not easy, it is what makes the organization successful. And to enlighten us more on this topic, we have veteran industry leaders who have seen the industry going through main transitions. So moderator for the event is Mr. Abhishek Chohan. Mr. Chohan is a seasoned strategy consulting professional with 15 plus years of rich experience in internet and telecom sector. Through his career in consulting firms such as Frost and Sullivan, Wayne and Company, KPMG, Consulting, he has gained considerable experience on deal and growth strategies. Moreover, during his stint with Go Digital General Insurance Limited, he headed the strategy practice for the fastest growing GI firm on the planet, becoming the first unicorn of 2021. Recently, he founded SAMVEDANAM Consulting. SAMVEDANAM helps startup in fundraising and aids in growth and operational levers. Mr. Govind Jaju. Mr. Jaju is founding partner of SUINGORA Consulting and was ex-president and global head of technical operations, supply chain, procurement, and API marketing of Ranbaxy, India. He has over 40 years of experience in pharma industry. Over his long career, he has led senior teams across multiple verticals. Renowned organizations like Nicholas Piramal and Ranbaxy has been credited with successful introducing and executing numerous new and unique initiatives across all verticals. Dr. Swapna Bhatawadekar. Dr. Swapna is a leadership coach and OD consultant. She started with her medical practice as doctor. Subsequently, she has worked with various organizations, corporates, and NGOs. Eventually, she processed to become an entrepreneur herself in cashew processing. For 5 years, she has also ventured into organizing events and training in agile develop coaching. Mr. Arun Sharma. Mr. Arun Sharma is an executive director of KPMG. Mr. Sharma has rich experience in global markets, including USA, UK, Indonesia, Dubai, Finland, and Australia. His prior work ex include Accenture, PwC, and TCS. Moreover, he is advisor to the startup ecosystem, especially in social empowerment and educational area. Over to you, Abhishek, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shraddha, for the kind introduction. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir, you are.
All right. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Shraddha. And thank you, team IIM Sirmaur and team Sampreshan for this wonderful event. I think, and most welcome to my fellow panelists, Mr. Govind, Dr. Swapna, and Mr. Arun. The topic today, which is focused on Gen Z, redefining strategies, for the Gen Z market, it is certainly pertinent. Increasingly, Gen Zs are increasing representation across the world. Every second or third person whom you interact with in India is a Gen Z. Globally as well, every third or fourth person that you interact is Gen Z. Who are these Gen Zs? Just to make sure that all of us are aligned, would like to just define the standard definition of Gen Zs before opening the questions and the discussion to my fellow panelists here. Gen Zs, are defined as people who have been born between the years of 1997 and 2012 as per standard industry bodies. Now, why are they becoming increasingly important? This generation specifically has born digital, breathes digital, They are someone who believe in the impact and importance of networking. They are really not conscious about society. They like to challenge the status quo. They like to communicate. They like to be heard. They like to position themselves as someone who want to make a difference. And there are a number of traits which kind of define Gen Zs. In fact, it's a very exciting time. I mean, we used to focus a lot on millennials across the studies that we used to do. I personally am a millennial, and all of a sudden I have started realizing that, yeah, I mean, I've got older, and now it's the time of Gen Zs. I was sitting with my dentist the other day, and she said a very interesting fact. She said that millennials used to, get wisdom tooth issues in the age groups of 30 to 40. Gen Zs generally get their wisdom tooth issues sorted before the age of 30. So that's the kind of difference that Gen Zs are actually making to our lives, to the market, and of course, narrowing it down to the business ecosystem and environment. Now, driven by this context, would like to now open up the session with a very interesting question and a slightly open-ended question. Would like to start, in no particular order, but would like to start with Mr. Govind. And this question, is all questions will be subsequently asked to all my fellow panel members here. But driven by this context, Mr. Govind, how do you see the impact of Gen Zs translating into the overall environment and specifically the business environment right now?
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning to Shraddha, Abhishek, Swapna, Arun, all Gen Z team which is attending this particular program, and all the members of other generations also. Thank you for having such a beautiful topic where we all can share our views. Coming to what Abhishek has just now said, how does Gen Z looks at environment, or how environment will change because of that? If we talk about environment in general, let's take the bigger topic like global environment. Now there is a lot of talk happening on global environment. What is going to be the impact of the climate change? How is it going to affect the earth, and how is that going to affect our future generations? I believe a lot of talks, a lot of planning, less of activity currently. Good part is this particular issue is quite near to heart to the Gen Zs. They believe in this quite a lot, and therefore I believe it's a question of time. As Gen Z group grows up, maybe next decade, I'm sure they will not only just talk, but they will get into it. They'll get into in an action mode. Now, how do we deal with whether it is pollution, whether it is global warming, whether it is overpopulation, so on and so forth. Having said something about globally, let's narrow it down to how will it affect the business? How will it affect the industry? I think Abhishek just defined that Gen Zs are typically people born between 1998 and 2012, which is actually 16 years of slot. When you take 16 years of slot and just look at the world population, which is 750 crores, we can easily say that the total population of Gen Z is between 150 to 200 crore. Country-wise, it may differ. The maximum will be is in India. And the other countries also, which has a good number of population. So imagine a population of Gen Z which is around 150 to 200 crore. No company can afford to ignore that. In addition to that, it is also expected, and by a research analyst, that the income of Gen Z is going to go up in a very vertical fashion, northwards. There is an expectation that next 10 years, the income could go up by 5 times. I'm talking about income of Gen Zs. Now, if it goes up by 5 times, I'm sure in next 10 years, they will cross total income of next generation, that is generation Y. And Abhishek, it is our generation, which is millennium generation. So with that type of earning and with that type of numbers, I think it's in the best interest of any company to make their strategies in line with what does this group want. And to know that what does this group want, first you will have to understand this group. Understand what are they looking at? What are their values? What do they want to do in their life? Now, okay, this tells me a small interesting story I thought I should share with you. I have a granddaughter. Her name is Ashi. Currently, she is 2.5. But I remember when we did his mundan, I think you understand mundan. You take the hairs off. We did our first mundan, and that was the Corona period. We did not invite, obviously, from anybody from the society. And next day on my mobile, I started getting message from my social communities on WhatsApp. Happy Mundan, multiple messages. And I was wondering who, like we are not invited anybody. How did this go out? And to my surprise, what Ashi did next day, she took my phone, took her photograph, and posted that photograph on WhatsApp. And that's at the age of maybe around 1 year. Now, this may not be Gen Z. This is probably Generation Alpha. But look at the way these people are handling technology. And same girl, we have a Google, and if you don't put on the song which she likes, she will go to Google. She can hardly speak, but she will talk in her language to Google. Hey Google, and play this song, and Google plays. You give her a telephone, she can find out the YouTube and scrolls through YouTube with both the fingers, so speedily, and locates exactly the video she wants. Whether it's a Tom and Jerry or anything, and runs it. She goes through my photograph video collection, thousands, scrolls it so fast, we can hardly see. But she exactly spots her own video and runs it. I'm telling all this to you because this is what defines the characteristic of Generation Alpha. And Generation Gen Z is no different than that. They're also equally technology savvy. They are born with technology. They have all these technologies, whether it is internet, whether it is social media, and everything on their hand. It's not like earlier generation, whether they had TV, but that was fixed. There were programs, but they were in particular time. They don't have time constraint. They don't have location constraint. And they have every information, every knowledge, everything at their tips. Now we have to think of this generation, which has so much at their tips. They have so much knowledge. And obviously, if there is so much of knowledge, they don't have patience to go through each and every word of it. They just don't want to go. So what matters to them? Something which will catch their senses. So whether it is audio, whether it is video, more so for video. And since they are technology savvy, probably the latest technology. Whatever latest technology you can use in your, I'm telling this so that it will also tell you that what is that type of business environment. Because if this is what they want, companies will have to get into it, and it's better for them. So when they are tech savvy, they are waiting for some new technology. There are companies. We know this company who makes specs, Lenskart. Now we all know that in Lenskart, sitting at home, you can take your video and then try multiple specs on yours and see which one works. There are other companies where you can try your clothes on yours without getting into the stores, without actually trying it out. Tens and hundreds of clothes you can try and select which one you want. And that's what it is going to be in future. This is what Gen Z likes. This is what is the direction there. Therefore, I think the companies who want to remain, I would rather say who want to remain in competition, it's question of time. this is not only liked by Gen Z. When this comes for Gen Z, it is appreciated by every generation, whether it is Millennium, whether it is Alpha, whether it is Generation X, or generation like me who are boomers. I also like it. So this is going to push the entire technology-based, use either brand creation or business. Second part of this is social media. Now today, entire generation, I don't know, somebody had said that nearly 90% of Gen Zs are hooked to their social media. 90% of them. If so much of population is there on social media, you can't ignore social media. So therefore, the environment, the businesses will have to look at it. What is this social media and how do we put our products over there? How do we sell through this social media? And within that, now Gen Z don't have time. They don't have that much of attention span. They want to quickly switch from one to another. They can work with multiple screens at a time. There's a 5, 10 at a time, and therefore keep on switching one between another. You need to also make sure that your product, your brand captures their eyesight. So it has to be that attractive. It has to be something which is like interactive. It's not like advertisement. The days are gone where there's an advertisement, there's a big boards, and they keep on saying what they are. And obviously they say what good they are. Because there is so much of information available with Gen Z, they are really not bothered how good they are. Because they have so much of information. You try to sell them something, within seconds, they will find out competition, they will find out reviews, and that's another point. When it comes to reviews, they would like to go by somebody whom they know. They would like to go by the experience or the viewpoint of either their colleague or their friend or somebody who has genuinely commented on that experience of product or service. So all that put together is what is going to drive businesses and industry in future, so that they capture this Gen Z. And capturing Gen Z, at least I personally see an advantage. This generation is going to be there at least for next 50, 60 years. So when you capture them, if you can create a brand loyalty with them, that is going to stay for long. And that's
Sure.
what the major change I see. Yeah, Abhishek, that's what I have.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Govind, and certainly very relevant points you have mentioned in terms of how people are changing, driven by the sheer representation of Gen Z in terms of their behavior in personal life and even in business environment. Dr. Swapna, you bring in really credible experience, and specifically, you have spent good amount of time, basis whatever I could understand from a sheer introduction, in terms of taking initiatives on leadership and coaching. How have you seen things changing specifically? And would you agree, or would you like to add to something that Mr. Govind said?
Yes, thanks, Abhishek. Quickly, let me pay my gratitude and thanks to the team IIM Sirmaur and this Gen Z, I would say, audience across there. Again, big thanks to the fellow panelists. And let me get back to the point now. When I look at the Gen Z people, if you ask me to define in one line, I define them like, tell me something I don't know. The dialogue from Simba actually defines them. So I would say, Abhishek, you mentioned that you came from a millennial generation. I came from generation X, and I would say I'm mother to Gen Z person. And so what difference I see between you, me, and the Gen Z people? So even in our 20s, everybody, we were like, tell me something I don't know, but we were not that vocal the way Gen Z people are. They don't wait to say it. We used to wait. We used to see around who are there, and that's how I would say Gen Z. I see the difference between my generation, the millennial generation, and Gen Z generation. So just putting my point across, I'm just again giving you some figures, because these figures are available there on Google, various sites and various surveys. But still, to support my point of view, I would say there is a 32% population, that is 7.7 billion people of this generation. 2.6 billion global consumer population by 2020. That's the survey says. Okay. 44 billion is their spending power. $600 million of family spending, they influence who? Gen Zs. They influence their buying capacities. 30% of US labor force, means this figure I just got for US only and not a global mark, but yes, we can easily project from that. So 30% of US labor force by 2030 will be Gen Z. So when I look at these numbers, there is one more thing I want to add, that gig economy is getting, I would say, more populated, or it's getting more popular. Okay. So what exactly it means for a business scenario? So I look at it means broadly in two categories. I consider Gen Z as a consumer. So how my market strategy or my product brand strategy goes for this generation. And then I look at it from a business strategy or organization lens point. So how my organization or my business strategy should evaluate from this kind of numbers or this kind of population. So quickly again, whatever we get from the I would say surveys, these Gen Z people are like 8 seconds attention span. They navigate fast through their I would say social media accounts. They are very brand loyal. There is one interesting thing, means people of older generations, they find this generation very distracted, but it is not. They are communicated, they are collaborated on their social communities, and when they get chance, they communicate and meet in person. So it's others might find that these people are not connected. No, they are very well connected, and they find reviews, they give reviews, and they follow reviews. This generation is not at all self-centered, I always feel. They certainly review their parent, or certainly accept their parents' review, but yes, they use their right to evaluate anybody's review. So they don't accept it blindly, but they certainly want feedback, more review. So when this kind of consumer is there in market, yes, my marketing strategy should based on this particular thing. And there are I would say, we will discuss in, if time permits, in the future points. There are various initiatives like memes. They follow memes, they follow the taglines. I came to know like puns. So I sometimes I don't know how to pronounce it, so my daughter corrects me, so how to pronounce that. But these are the interesting things. Even I get motivated with such kind of things. And even I feel not only Gen Zs, when we are rushing through time, I only like the catch line. No? I'm not there sitting there to look at the entire long advertisement. So that is one a market strategy point. And business strategy point, means from business strategy point, I feel we really need to look into business processes, how the business environment is there, what culture I'm building through my organization. These are means Gen Z people are very diverse in their ideals. They have got very different lifestyles, so they don't follow structured lifestyle for a group. So every person comes with their individual, I would say, personalities around. So as a business person, or as a senior person in this business ladder, I need to understand how I can motivate them, how I can engage them, how I can retain them. Because when a survey came, there are a large number of population of Gen Z, they want to become entrepreneur in their life sometime. That means today, if I am hiring a person, Gen Z person, I am hiring him for some time only. So I'm not going to get that person for a longer period. Then for that particular period, when that person is with me, how I can make best of the use of his potential with me, and how I can nurture him to become a best entrepreneur who will give employment to another generation, I would say, or next generation. So I need to look into that as a business person. So I would say as a generation X, we see the industry. If we see the human evolution, if we see the technological evolution, and if we see the industry evolution, generation X, that my generation, we started with the digital, I would say, evolution of industrial evolution, digital evolution. Previous two industry evolutions, they took certain time span, around 50 years. But see how the world is compressed with technological advancement. We are just there in the industry for say 20 or 25 odd years, not more than that. And the fourth industrial evolution is knocking the door, or it has already knocked the door, and we have made indoors to the fourth revolution, and that is the revolution of AI and data science. What has happened during this 25 years period? The generation X is still there in the business. They are at the end of their career. They have given, I would say, they have nurtured this Gen Z, I would say, generation in their own houses. And now that Gen Z people are there to take over the business and understand the more and change the entire, I would say, horizon of the business strategy. So my last point in this summation is change is only constant in this world. We all know that. But only problem today is this change is changing too fast. Okay, and with the Gen Z, they know how to change faster, I would say, Gen Z people. So I would say as an organization, means organization development lanes or a business strategy person, I need to think how I can make best use of this Gen Z enthusiasm and their various interests and their various aspirations. Thanks, Abhishek.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swapna. And you make some really, really relevant points that how in today's time, consumerism has changed driven by behavior of Gen Zs and how it does impact our business strategy as well as operational strategy in today's environment, right? So probably I can connect with a couple of thoughts here before putting my next question to Mr. Arun. But essentially, we also, during our work, experienced it significantly. How we started calling, in our business terms, telecom media technology as internet, because internet was simple for Gen Z B2B customers to understand, right? We were working with a leading media conglomerate who used to have a traditional media arm and who also used to have a OTT media, over-the-top media, like an Amazon Prime. And with increasing representation of Gen Zs, their advertising revenue from the traditional arm started getting cannibalized by their OTT arm. So it was not external competition, but the problem
Yes.
was how they can make sure that their traditional businesses stay relevant. And we actually help them to figure out the new space or new set of customers and the business strategies around it. And one of the bigger questions we had to really explain to them was that even in today's environment, the profile of CMO has changed. Today, the CMO is a Gen Z, or you can say a late millennial, and his behavior is very different as compared to how the traditional CMOs used to think, right?
Yes.
So you make some really relevant points, and Arun, Mr. Arun, I think my next question is directed to you. That specifically, I think, and I see a lot of similarities in your experience and mine personally as well. Specifically, how do you connect with the discussion points so forward, and specifically, when we are increasingly working with startups? Another example that comes to my mind is that when I was in Bangalore for the last 5 years, and it continues to be the startup capital, we actually were forced to think about how we need to dress ourselves before entering the CEO of a startup, CEO's room, CEO's office. The business attires used to be intimidating for them when we used to dress ourselves in proper consulting attires as well, right? So a lot of things have started changing. How do you see this, basis your experience when you have been working with a lot of disruptive startups, staying close to digital, etc.? What kind of business strategies you are seeing being successful or being failed in terms of your closer, experience with the startup world, and specifically targeted towards Gen Zs? And what are some of the things that the group here should keep in mind when they launch themselves into the business environment shortly? Arun, over to you.
Sure. So happy to be on part of. Thanks, Abhishek. Yeah, I could follow the question. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a lag, but I could follow it in a broad sense. Pleasure to be here and be participant of this, right? And I think to start with, on a lighter note, you made a very right point. How we dress up, right? So today, if you see, I'm wearing a t-shirt, and that's my normal attire nowadays, right? Gone are the days where we are wearing decked up in the suits and the ties. So I recollect my initial days in consulting, both in India as well as abroad, right? And it was always about matching ties and matching suits, right? But but that has gone really, really low in many ways, right? And I think rightly so. It's just about that, you don't want to come intimidating. I think that's the right word. And I would use that word even when I've done work with so in the work I do, there's a plethora of option, or rather a big spectrum of the clients, right? I have done works last year with some of the market government organizations like Department of Defense, Highway Authority of India. At the same time, I work with some of the big corporate houses, the futuristic of startups ecosystem. But everyone has a very different point of view on how to do it, right? But I think the critical element, as we've been talking about, right, the customer centricity, know your customer, those basic ethos that we would have learned, in our early preschool days. And I would say 15-20 years back, when many of us who have the privilege to be a panelist, to be speaking about it, right? The basic ethos have not changed. The ethos of knowing the customer centricity has not changed, right? Earlier, we were knowing customer basis certain data sets. Now that customer is evolving, we are also evolving. I think, and I could speak on the behalf of all the people on this panel, definitely, that as a consultant, I think one thing we take a lot of pride in is we keep ourselves also improving, right? Yes. So when we go into a client conversation, the idea is, how do I be relevant? I think the relevant and the customer centricity are the two fundamental points. How organizations are changing, there are different ways, right? So Dr. Swapna talked about a very important element, the gig economy. So I see many organizations now are talking to us saying that, how do we make sense of gig economy? Similarly, I've done work with at least 5 or 6 big corporate houses last year in about how do we make virtual hybrid model work. Okay, and I take a very simple example. Typically, when you see a lot of people who are on this forum today, as bachelors, all of us have done, we have shared rooms with each other, right? Earlier, what used to happen, we used to go to the office. I remember my early days, I used to work on a client desktop, come back home. Now everybody works on the laptop. People are working from home. This particular CIO, CHRO, all of us were talking to me saying that, Arun, now people are staying in the rooms, definitely in the COVID era. What if they start sharing the data point? Because one house where it could be having 3 rooms shared by 3 people in a worst case scenario, in a simplistic scenario, it could be more. So how can I ensure that my person, while my team member is not looking at the others' data and vice versa, right? I don't think there's an answer to that. That's more of a company policy to handle. Like earlier also, if I'm going to office, I could bring a printout from my office and then hand it over to my friend as a competition leakage. But these are employee policy to worry about. I think what I responded in that scenario, and what I would also call out in a very practical thing, maybe people are overreacting and over panicking also when it comes to handling this. So I think one important element I would like to call out from my experience, you could be extremely uncomfortable inside, but how do we comfortable outside? That's what I keep telling my clients, right? The good aspect is, how do you respond faster? There's a lot of plethora of knowledge about agility, but what does agility really mean? How fast you can respond? So in this concept of, when I was defining the virtual model for the client in terms of hybrid model, there were people who are willing to work from home 2 days a month, 2 days a week. They had nice houses, no issue whatsoever. They could even work 5 days a week. They had everything at home, but they had parents whom have to be taken care. They had dogs, young children. How do you really maintain that? Somebody has to take a client late call. So this choice, the power of customer, the power of employee is very important. So what we are telling organization is, are you listening enough? Are you sensing enough? Gone are the days where you do a quarterly survey where people will ask you to fill these kind of forms. Gone are the days. So I think the important element is, Are you sensing it quickly? Do you have an arm which senses the problem statement very quickly? The ethos of customer centricity and relevance don't go away, right? The faster response time is the key. The agility or the sprint thing that was there in software business, right? The agility of understanding, taking an action is important. And I'll just make very, very interesting part here, statement here when you talked about the startup, right? And this is where my personal experience has been. One of the company that I've worked very closely with, 3 years back, now it has been acquired by Reliance Industries, right? In their Reliance Geo platform venture. So, so this founder is very, very close friend of mine. So I recollect that once he asked me very simple question that, Arun, now we have reached to an X stage. Now the expectation from the market, even after the acquisition, is to go to 10 or 100x. How do I do that? So what I did, I sat with the team and asked them a very simple question about, do you guys understand growth mindset? People over here, I really want you to kind of think through the construct of growth mindset in a very realistic manner. How do you really define yourself? Learning, innovation, at the same time, ability to embrace the failure. That is very, very important. So some of these things are really interesting. The one element which I want to call out very specifically from a global market to an Indian context, because I happen to be also spending a lot of my work experience time abroad, is that if I recollect, 2001 was the first time when I traveled abroad, right? I presume many of the kind of students who are part of this call, maybe they were really, really young those days, right? So I recollect going to UK and finding it extremely different. Coming back to India was extremely different, both in terms of infrastructure, bank facilities, anything that you touch. You go to hospital, you go to office, you look at the transport. Things have evolved such a fast pace now. What is there is almost here. You may say that government has a bit of limitation and some countries are more advanced, but the pace at which things have happened is absolutely phenomenal, right? So I think, I'll just say customer centricity, being relevant, being a sensing organization, and ability to take decisions much faster in agile manner and improve upon. There's no one answer, right? 5 years back, everybody, or rather until 2 years back, everybody was around on Facebook. Where is Facebook today? We all know that, right? My daughter introduced me other day to Discord, which I was not even aware of that something like that exists, right? So Facebook completely going away, just like in our days with what happened with Orkut. So it's a case of evolution. And as it happens, and Swapna ma'am talked about, Jaju sir also mentioned about various data points, data sets that this Gen Z will have immense power to influence. And the good part is all the organizations that I work with, they understand if we don't react to it, we'll go extinct. So whenever I go and tell any of my clients that if you have to do a reskilling of your employees, do with a consultant, because if I don't reskill myself, I will go extinct. I'll not survive. So these are some of the key pointers I want people to live with.
Arun, thank you so much. I think you gave us some really good food for thought here, and essentially, evolution is the only constant, and evolution is becoming fast. I think it's a very, very interesting paradigm and interesting time that all of us are staying. And being agile with focus on customer centricity, certainly, I think I completely agree and can't, agree more on this point. So my next question is to Mr. Govind. So Mr. Govind, with the rich experience that you bring in across the aspects of business and certainly a lot more focused experience on the aspects of supply chain, and we just spoke about agility, etc., right? And essentially, another facet of it is that our vendors also are seeing increasing representation from Gen Zs. They are also becoming more and more digital, etc., right? So how do you specifically, going slightly deeper into the supply chain aspect of it, how do you see the impact of Gen Z, creating some sort of reform for traditional supply chains, and how do you see modern supply chains evolving driven by this trend?
Okay. Supply chain, to me, a supply chain today is no more country specific. It has become a global supply chain. In fact, it's very difficult to imagine a product where either some major input or even a small input is not there from different countries. Having said that, supply chain has become more complex, a lot more complex than what it used to be. I have handled supply chain right from start of my career, and in this journey of 40 years, supply chain, what used to be writing down on a piece of paper and making the daily plans with pen and paper, today has become completely integrated, backed up by global softwares like ERPs. And not only stopping there, because this is only within the organization, connecting it with all your organization, and that is your suppliers, vendors, customers, everywhere. So what we have seen, that either you call it development of technology, had been tremendous. And this has helped industry also in a way, whoever has adopted, or there are many who have adopted it, to grow not only within India, but even outside. Now, okay, let me give you a simple example. What we used to do, planning on a paper, manufacture the product, and then distribute it which all the countries. We used to work in nearly 125 countries. We used to supply the material to 125 countries and had our offices in 47 different countries, so all over the world. Now, managing therefore 5,000, 6,000 SKUs on a piece of paper was tough. And when we were the first company in India which implemented SAP in a big bang way in pharma sector, and when the whole thing came on SAP and as it stabilized, the entire supply chain process became so connected. We further went by redesigning the supply chain with the need of the hour at that point of time, which means globally putting all the products together, deciding which product should be manufactured in which plants. We had 18 plants, 9 of them outside India, 9 of them within India. And considering the time to service, considering cost aspect, and the whole thing was possible to do because there was SAP. Now, along with this, when we did digitization within our company to make it what you call a supply chain or a seamless supply chain, we also worked with our vendors where the connecting points. Just to give an example, like suppose when you decide to raise a PO, we had given access to the vendor where they could see the moment the PO is approved in the system, they could see the PO. They could see their receivables. Whenever they are dispatching the goods, they could update their dispatch details onto it, against which we can make a GR. So interconnection. Same is the case even with the customer. Knowing the customer, what products they are having, and therefore what I should replenish, and based on that you do a future planning. And if you have to do it with 5,000, 6,000 SKUs, it's all what you need is a digital backbone like a supply chain or an SAP. And that's what had been a progress over this many. And I still believe, not only this, there are many things which has come up and which will come up in future. One thing which I believe will come up is the advanced gadgets which are coming up. Like AI is going to help in a big way in supply chain. The next one, the other day I was talking in a pharma supply chain forum, and somebody asked me, how do you see future of drones? And I was telling the group, I said, look, currently drones are in evolving stage. But having said that, when you look at the supply chain, the last leg of supply chain is generally inefficient and expensive. To me, answer for that is drones. And I was imagining myself that if I'm sitting in my room, place an order for a medicine, and after half an hour, I'll see that a drone is coming and delivering that medicine into my balcony. And I believe that's not far off. It's a question of few months or maybe a year. This will happen. The delivery through drones will happen. And that is where supply chain, right from start to end, will work. Now, when we talk about B2B customer or vendors is actually, for them, we are the B2B customer. And therefore, all these technologies and who are Gen Z B2B, Gen Zs who are driving these B2Bs, they are going to look out for this type of technology. And this technology will give them, one is speed and second is the flexibility. anything which the parent company wants to bring in as a new product, as a new concept, as a new supply chain initiative, they will have to be dependent onto your supplier. And how fast your vendor can change, how fast your vendor can respond, is going to decide how fast you can bring in new products, how fast you can bring in the new services into the market. I'll give a simple example in pharma sector, and Dr. Swapna will agree with me. We all know there are the medicines. In each of the medicines, there's a lot of information. The biggest name probably is the brand, and then content, and then manufacturer, so on. And they are decided by multiple agencies, whether it is marketing decide their own brand side. There is a, sorry, let me just put this off. There's a regulatory who decide the legal aspect of it. There is a manufacturing which decides whether it will run on the machine or not. Multiple things. And I remember the day when I started my work in a pharma industry, making a new label artwork and implementing it is going to be an Herculean job. That piece of paper used to run between the departments every time. By the time it gets, take everybody's views onto board and then approve it, then give it to the printer. He will make some the initial sample, give it to you. Whole thing will take months. And today, with the help of this technology, everything is computerized. All those people, there is a flow, the workflow has been put into place. Whatever you want, whether you want to change, you want a new label, it's just been done. It comes into your email, look at it. It's a question of days now, it's not months. Within 2-3 days, you can either make a new artwork or you can change and you can start printing. Therefore, your response to launch a new product, it is very fast. So, like that, there are multiple things which have changed in supply chain, and it will keep on changing. It is required in that way. That's how I see it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Govind. And I'm very sure that the change or the disruptive tech evolution in supply chain is driven by the Gen Z thinking, as they are, kind of increasingly joining the various departments in a firm. In addition to technology, Mr. Govind, have you seen any other aspects as well changing, driven by increasing Gen Z? For example, as we're talking about, right, most of the startups today are founded by entrepreneurs who mostly represent either late millennial or Gen Z population. So have you seen certain qualitative changes in behavior as well in terms of flexibility required in terms of trade, or more innovative service bundles being offered to you as their B2B customer, etc.?
Yeah, I think you said it rightly. The way we used to do business, let's say 20-30 years back and today, is hugely changed. Everybody wants, in fact, the Gen Z wants not just general product. They want some product which is customized to them. There are many people who look at the business completely differently. They are ready to take bigger risk. They are ready to do a lot more study. They are ready to spend their time and money on building the brands and bringing in the flexibility which their customer wants. And why I'm saying technology again and again, because in all their thinking and planning, when it comes to execution, technology helps them. And technology is helping them in terms of either reducing timeline, improving response, getting the new technologies, the latest technologies, so that it becomes more attractive to the customer, multiple things. But I completely agree that either Gen Zs or early millennials or late millennials are the one who are thinking, looking at the business completely differently. Let's take a sector of even services. There was a time we never imagined that these services could become a business. And today we see a lot of it. Today, there was a time when we all used to take a pride in having 1 car, 2 car, 1 house, 2 house. Today, that's not the case. Nobody is actually interested in owning, but they say, let me have an access, and you pay for that service. Whether it is rental, whether it is subscription, whether you pay for your taxi, but you don't need to carry a car for that, which sits in our house for months together. So the things have changed.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Govind. And you say a very relevant point, which is around ownership. I think a lot of our generations, if we just look at two cohorts, Gen Z and non-Gen Z, non-Gen Zs used to take pride in owning, while Gen Zs take pride in experiencing, right? And that's how I kind of differentiate. So my next question is to Dr. Swapna, and I'll translate it to a OD kind of case study. I mean, so one great things for when you work for a startup, and you certainly get exposed to a startup environment after working for a large corporate, is that in a startup there is nothing called as a standard KPI. You are supposed to take a lot more ownership. You're supposed to contribute to whatever you can. And when I moved to a startup initially, my first experience with in terms of a full-time role with a startup, the HR was reporting into me, because at that point in time, we had to figure out a way that how can probably someone like me can bring in some learnings from the global and Indian experience in larger organizations to lay down some best practices. Having said that, it was not that simple for me, because I was handling a very different kind of audience. Most of my audience in the startup were younger Gen Zs, certain traits that probably you can agree or you can evolve or differ, which I realized was the first one, which Mr. Govind said. It is experience versus ownership. A second trait was no belief in hierarchy. Everyone would like to come and have some face time with the CEO and have flatter, leaner organization, right? Third is, how they will prioritize skill set development more. And it is somewhere connected to my first point versus the paycheck that they are getting. Fourth thing probably that comes to my mind is customized learning versus generic learning. I think a very, very specific learning, and they are very clear about what they want to go for, right? Maybe there are some more points, but I think willingness to take more, experience more rather than being confined to their role, etc. So basis your experiences, Dr. Swapna, specifically, when it comes to OD, how have you seen the behaviors of organizations changing towards this environment? And Mr. Arun did speak about some interesting things specifically experienced by organizations during COVID, when people also started working remotely, and 90% of these people were from Gen Z, right? So over to you, Dr. Sapna. Would love to hear some very interesting experiences you've had.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. I would just before I touch this point, I would like to say that we are human beings, and the basic, I would say, psychological fact for our being human is we like to be in comfort zones. And the earlier generations, means Generation X, say millennial, we really take time to change. And that's what I said. With current times, with Gen Zs around, the change itself is changing very fast. The speed or the pace of the change is so fast that when you ask me how organizations are taking it, or from organization development phase, I tell you, if you really don't change or if you really don't understand, then you are not going to be there for longer period on this business area. That's for sure. So the early you understand, the early the leaders understand it, it's better for businesses to stay relevant and to grow in the space. See, finally, when I talk from a business angle, what I need as a I would say business person, or as a nation, I need good businesses. I need profit making businesses, whatever the ideas be product, be service, no matter what the idea is. But when we say these millennials, Gen Zs are getting higher paychecks, they will get higher paychecks when we run profitable businesses, right? So whoever is the running, I would say, head of the organization, be it a millennial, be it a Gen Z person, but if they run a profitable business, then only this nation will grow. Not only business, I would say environment, this nation will grow. So now coming back to what trends they are in. So yes, means paycheck versus upskilling. Yes, Gen Zs are more looking forward to the learnings based environment, or experiential learning, how they say, or on job learning. So they need some, I would say, support from organizations. So HR policies are also evolving now. Abhishek, I see the difference between large corporates and mid-size or small or new startups. So like you said, yes, there are many I would say things we learn while we do it in totality in small organizations, while in large organizations we are segmented to one particular I would say department, or we are handling that because the volume itself is large. But in small or startups, we really learn many things in one go. But what defines me as I would say employee, or I would say the Gen Z employee of any organization, or I would say organization, when I look at Gen Z person, I need to design my training and development or training modules based on their needs. I cannot design my training modules based on what I think as a business owner or whatever top management person. So I need to talk with these people. I need to understand what they need, and then I have to design it, and then I have to give it. So now what happens if what they need is different and what my business need is different? That's where the communication comes in. How you communicate with them. Do you make them feel that they are partners in this entire thing, though they are employees, but do you make them feel that they are equal partners in the entire process, not only to their own job? So when you make feel, or when you share your ownership of your business strategies with them, yes, you are going to get the positive I would say output from this. And then it's a means when I look at these young people coming around with enthusiastic idea, it's so much of energy, you can feel that energy, and that's really driving. Just I'm diverting a little bit on this particular point. I would say, what, like human beings, we always are little bit insecure, and we are insecure about the fear of failure, okay, or we are insecure about, I don't know what the growth will be like. So currently, when I was reading many reports regarding the Gen Z surveys and books and all, I felt a point that let's not fear about what will happen next. Let's give them the ground, the best ground what we have built for last 20-25 years, and I'm sure they will bring more solutions which we are really not thinking of. And yes, we have done the part in a great way. That's what I always feel about in the business scenario. Yeah, Abhishek.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Sapna, and I completely agree. And I think sooner the businesses do realize how agile they need to be and how
Yes.
customized they need to be, with specifically with the Gen Z cohort that is an integral part of their system now. Sooner they will taste the success and growth of business. And I can't agree more. In fact, we at our organizations, like a lot of startups, we also started prioritizing initiatives such as Chai Pe Charcha. We used to brainstorm a lot in terms of how to provide specific constructive feedback rather than giving them an open-ended feedback and waiting. I mean, with a Gen Z, if you give them a specific constructive feedback, the receptiveness of a higher or a lower rating is relatively higher if they can see logic to it. So logic is of utmost importance. And as you said, right, curiosity is something that will not stop them from asking any questions, whoever is standing in front, right? So that is something which is definitely defining and driving how organizations think and how they need to change. And so I would like to move to Mr. Arun now for my next question. And Mr. Arun, I think you also made some really pertinent points around customer centricity, being agile. We heard how supply chains are changing. We heard just now from Dr. Swapna how organizations need to rethink about their internal business operations. We looking at how we as individuals are, looking at our team members, etc., etc. A lot of new business models are being made looking at Gen Zs as the target audience right now. I mean, as you were saying, right, Reliance Jio, you work closely with one of the one of the recent projects that I did, Tata's were very closely involved, and they acquired a e-pharma player. I'm sure people would know now since it's a public news. And the entire business model was built on the premise of, so this e-pharma player essentially was looking at Bharat, so something what we call as non-urban India, right, which is increasingly becoming digital. And one bigger premise was that in every Indian household, there is at least one Gen Z, and that kind of proves the business case for their business model, right? So from that perspective, Mr. Arun, would love to hear some of the similar specific business case studies or organizational studies where, which you would have seen very, very closely, either being advisor or being an integral part of those teams. So over to you.
Sure, thanks. So I think 2-3 points I'll call out, and one thing I put also in the chat window, that some of us have been talking about Gen Z, and Gen Z is being silent, right? So guys, I know the panel discussion always follow an agenda, but please keep the questions coming, right? Otherwise it shouldn't become that few of us are deliberating and coming up with some thoughts. I think one of the two, 3 critical examples, and I'll call out, right? We were doing some project with SL Group or Z Media, and you talked about OTT evolution, right? 3-4 years back. And around that same time, I recollect that, Hotstar started it, but last 2 years, they didn't do that much in IPL. All of us who play cricket or watch cricket, I think many of Indians do, right? We have an opinion that this ball should have been played differently, right? So I remember, Hotstar coming up with the view, or a Star coming up with the view where they installed certain booths in various locations, especially in Mumbai, where you could play the previous ball as it happened in the game. So if Chahal is bowling ball, which is Google or a trickle leg spin, you will actually play the ball just playing in front of the TV. And I would also call out a very relevant example that on that particular time, I was working with Accenture those days, and Accenture has a huge innovation hub in Bangalore. And in that innovation hub, it's like, how do you really understand innovation? By being at the center of it. So when you ask about a specific example, Abhishek, I will definitely talk about that example where that innovation hub is like a theme park. Any business leader walks in, they just get mesmerized because all the use cases are live in action. And one of the fantastic use case with any Indian business leader I've gone with 20 or 30 of them is they make you pad up as you are standing in Melbourne cricket ground, and you could face Brett Lee. So they put those VR goggles, they give you the bat, and the moment you put the VR goggle, you feel that you're standing in the MCG, right? And the ball comes to you that pace. And you would have seen those versions of Smash Grounds and many others, right? So what I'm talking about is that is what we call about as the experience center. You go and face it, you go and feel it, right? So what I'm talking about, we as a firm, when we talk about, and now with KPMG, we are also talking about how do you really make the clients talk about R&D, innovation, design thinking, persona is about making people actually be part and immersed into it. And I mentioned about a specific example, right? Like the way we could close many of the deals, right, was around that. And in that particular element, and I remember you asked a question to Dr. Swapna also on the organization, and that's an area I also work with. I did a program where, one of the client asked me very relevant question about, this is a French bank, right? One of the important things with the French organization, they don't let go of people, right? And they realize that the kind of population in the age of 35 to 40 who have been with them good 8 to 10 years, it's a massive bank in Bangalore forever. And they don't let go of people. People are getting a little bit irrelevant in terms of digital coming in. They ask us to come and do a program on digital upskilling at rapid pace. So anytime learning recommendation, completely on phone, as gadget heavy, as driven by the gamification, personalization you could think of. But the thing which always stuck with me is the way the India CEO launched a program, right? It has never gone away. And one thing and that learning which have never gone away from my head, and I use that multiple times, is that this is to help, right? There are many that have learning models have to be given away. I think that is where we talk about, how do you change faster? How do you learn faster? So I'm just sharing with you that a program where, they had such a massively beautiful learning center, which had names of, Takshila, Harvard, Yale, MIT, Oxford, and they used to bring in faculty from there. But when they started program, which was all driven on the phone, they made it very clearly, it's a program designed for you to unlearn. Unlearn what you feel has worked for you in the past. Make it learn in a different manner. So all I'm just trying to say that, these are some of the very, very powerful things that I've seen. And, of multiple business models I have seen up till now. And one thing which I feel could be one of the very promising thing in the coming decade, right? And especially for the kids, all the Gen Z populace that we have is another thing which I would also always call out is the whole investment scenario. Many people like us, and I know even folks who have done best B schools, advising best with a consultant, 80% of their money is in FD, fixed deposits. Do we really understand how the money works? Right. So the generation that is coming today, they talk about this money investment like anything. So if you see the way organizations are changing, right? LIC IPO is about to come. What is LIC IPO document talking about? Many of us who had privilege of buying LIC, and I would say that is more of the panelist, is through an agent who is possibly a friend or a family member. But how the current generation buy? What is LIC talking about in their prospectus upfront? That we have 40% of new policies are done through agents. We have to change that. I think their online penetration is only 3 to 4%. And they're coming very clearly when we're going to bring in IPO to be relevant in the market. It's important to have a digital channel, right? So I think these changes are all around us. On the Investec platform, I remember meeting with someone, and IND Money is one of the platform which is launched by Ashish Kashyap from Goa IBBO, right? What they have done is massively good on IND Money platform, right? The way they are reaching out. And I would even go one step further. I'm someone, people may have any different political affiliation, but what I've seen is while I was in UK and made some post about, rising corruption in India, Aam Aadmi Party, while I was sitting in UK, reached out to me saying that Kejriwal is coming to London for something. Do you want to meet him in person? Because we found your observation very pertinent. So all I'm trying to say that, it's the whole plethora of options is about sensing and responding fast, giving the other person value and knowledge is absolutely clear. Jaju sir talked about the excellent example of lens card, right, which is in front of us. So those options are just only too many, and they will only increase. And that's what tells about the power that we as India will have. Because, when we talked about various numbers, other countries, we definitely have this big demographic advantage. The question is, can we play to our strength? Yeah, I'll take a pause, Abhishek.
Yeah, no, this is extremely helpful, Mr. Arun, and I completely agree. I think the interesting examples that you spoke about, whether it was related to experience centers or whether it was related to innovation or whether it was about how companies have to think of making sure that they are agile enough to respond to the tremendous disruption that Gen Zs are kind of bringing into the market. I couldn't agree more. So without much ado, I completely agree with Mr. Arun also on the point that the Gen Zs here should ask questions now. So would open the floor for questions and answers now, looking at the time. So over to you, Shraddha, in terms of how you want to moderate the questions here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek sir, and everyone for such insightful session. It was really helpful for tons of students out there. So we have a couple of questions on YouTube Live as well, so I'll start with that. So there's a question from Rahul Singh. He is asking, due to differences in opinion, Generation Z ideas are considered way too dreamy or impractical by other generations. So how to overcome or come to common consensus in such situation? Anyone of you can take this question up.
So can I go for it?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Yeah, so because I always feel like this is like a perception, means what the question he has put, it's like perception. I perceive that means being a Gen Z, my opinions are not heard. Okay, so from a senior person, I would say senior business person, I would say no, it is not like that. But yes, then the responsibility lies on both shoulders, means how I make myself heard. Okay. So that is also a very interesting thing. So when senior people or millennial generation or when generation X is trying to reach out to Gen Zs, and we are finding ways, we are trying to, I would say, learn the technology. Sometimes you might have be little patient to make yourself learn heard. Am I right, Abhishek? Am I right in my thought here?
Yes, Dr. Swapna, I completely agree. I mean, you look at any disruptions that have happened, even, you go back so many years, you look at how Microsoft was founded at that time, what was the age of Mr. Bill Gates, or when Amazon was founded, what was the age of Mr. Bezos, or you look at the recent innovations. I mean, India saw a true revolution with Flipkart coming in, with Bansal brothers really taking it to the stage, and they were almost of that age what Gen Zs would be today. So it's not that these are the ideas sound dreamy. In fact, we as an organization, we started with an idea of an idea board where everyone in the organization would come and write their ideas. Of course, it could happen that your ideas might not get chosen over someone else's, but whoever ideas gets chosen, mostly it is someone who is representing from the Gen Z population, which makes a difference. So that's where I'll close this from my end. Thank you so much.
Just to add, I think I completely agree what you said, but just to add one more point to it, there is a perception, agreed, but how do we convert perception into something which you want to go through? So that means this perception is not true. I think simple thing is delivery to me. Let's say a small example, I'm trying to download an app and I'm not able to do it. So I tell my son that, look, you do it, and I feel probably he doesn't know much. He does it 2-3 times so easily. Next time I want to do something, I'll go to him and I'll tell him to do it because I know he can do it. I think that simple thing, that whatever your dream, whatever your thought process, as you start working on it, people start seeing the result that you're working towards it, they will automatically come down to you. They will believe you and they'll support you.
And sir, if I could just add a small point, Jaju sir, here, I think, completely aligned on the concept of the perception. One thing which, many organizations are asking us, and I've seen this in action at multiple places, the example that Jaju sir extended on a personal capacity, organizations are also doing it in the form of reverse mentoring. It doesn't mean that just because I know more, I can always teach you. There's so much to learn from you guys, right? So in the organization that I work, I've hired few people, and, in the last month, and, yesterday was one of the day where many of them came to office. I spent a good 1 hour to understand from them what you can help me learn, as simple as that. So I think the answer is very clear that, we are also extending our hand, but yes, don't have any preconceived notion. But reverse mentoring is something that organization, at least the level you guys will play, put it this way, the levels you guys will play with your IIM brand, you won't be stuck with this kind of perception, right? So you can easily go and talk to anyone, and people will always give a very meaningful ear to it and reason it out. So reverse mentoring is something people at my level are very, very keen to learn from you guys, right? So it's not one-way street. I can promise on that.
Completely agreed, sir. Thank you so much. I hope, Rahul, your query is solved. Now I request Gaurav to go ahead with his question.
Thank you. My question is to Jaju, sir. Sir, how you look at the scalability of the drone business and their models, as there is a startup at the Northeast India, like they are going to deliver the medicine and the healthcare requirements. But of course, the cost is very much high. Looking at the technical limitations, manufacturing limitation India has. So how we look at it around the scalability and having a economical, sustainable model as well.
Okay, first thing is establishing the concept. I think today we are not come to a stage where drone is actually delivering. Actually, I'm talking about in medicine sector or in pharmaceutical. In other sector, it has definitely started. There are many things which you have never heard of, never thought of, drones are doing today. Whether it is in a war, I'm sure last 2-3 days, all of you are watching war between Russia and Ukraine. Whether it is in farming, the drones are being used for every purpose you can think of. And same thing will happen here. Now, when it comes to a cost, whether it will be really cost effective or not, I think establishing the technology and the volume is an answer. Once the technology is established, once this becomes a routine thing, I think cost will take care of itself. We have many examples throughout our history that anytime any new product comes in, it is costlier. But as it stabilizes, as the volumes increase, as you find many deliveries happening, then there could be what you call consolidation of the routes, consolidation of deliveries. Multiple things will happen, but I'm sure it will be definitely much better in terms of cost for delivery.
Thank you so much, sir. Hope that solves your query. Now there is a question in chat box from Vikrant Kumar. He has a question for Govind sir. What change did Gen Z brought in logistic and supply chain management?
One is very clearly logistics and supply chain management is a digitization. The digitization of the whole logistic chain and end-to-end supply chain is something which has given so much of results, specifically for the companies like Ranbaxy, which has such a complex network. You can imagine 18 manufacturing plants, 9 of them in India, 9 outside India. And when I say outside India, they are in all the continents, whether it is US, whether it is Europe, Asia, Africa, everywhere. 5,500 SKUs which are being manufactured and sold in 125 countries. If this had to be done seamlessly, if this has to be done with a predetermined delivery time or response time, and each of the processes KPIs are formed and those are measured to strengthen that process. This is the way we had designed along with Gen Z. I still remember the team. And just to also add earlier question, in any team, if you have only people who are experienced, let us say people only from either millennials or from boomers, where you get experience from them, the output of the team may be good, but it's not so excellent. I throughout my career, I made sure that my team always composes people from different generations. And there is a clear expectation from Gen Z generations that apart from bringing in lot of energy into the team, into the group, they brought in a lot of, one is new knowledge and out-of-box thinking. Anybody who spends few years in a particular job definitely start thinking in a particular way. But when a new person comes in, looks at that job in a different fashion, he comes out with something new, different way of doing it. And that helps in to the organization and to the team. I've done it I've actually done it to the supply chain teams. 1 year, and this entire thing was configured, re-engineered, and put it onto SAP. And it worked very well.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope that answers your query, Vikrant. Muskan, you can go ahead.
Very good morning, all. So my question is to Arun sir. So I wanted to ask that as Gen Z is more inclined towards technology, so is there any negative implication of it? And like, if there is, how can it be rectified? How can we correct that?
So I think there's no negativity attached to it. I think that's for sure. The answer is different, that the whole concept of how technology is interwoven into business construct is changing, and the whole aspect of which we talked about, the experiences being a customer or being a user or being an employee. So in my perspective, and if I see typically, I would say the focus, be it any of the big organization I've worked with or in the consulting firms, the digital or technology has taken a very, very strong part, right? And what we have been told now, gone are the days where, I'll be upfront with you saying, 10 years back, somebody could say, I'm from consulting background, I don't know technology. I can't use that statement. Nobody in the consulting world can use the statement, I don't understand technology. Technology has such a huge, all-prevailing role to play. There's hardly any organization which doesn't have a chief digital officer or somebody, a strong digital team to respond to it, right? I think where it gets negative connotation, and as parent of 2 kids, 150, 111, it's just that, if you only are consuming the content and not really, what should I say, making sense of it, that's where the question comes in, right? So one of the typical ask, or, on a lighter note, I keep asking my kids when they are taking their classes in the home is I kind of make surprise visit, and the only thing I ask them, did you make some notes today, right? Or were you just listening? This is not a story time, right? So I've seen kids, I've seen students in a B school environment, and one of a new team member who joined me last year, we were sitting with a senior person and having very intense discussion, right? And I was the one who was on the whiteboard, engaging everything. And I asked her at the end of the session, okay, what are our notes? Let's compare. She hardly made any notes, right? So one of the first thing I would say that technology is something which is making your life easier, but some of those fundamental core things always are very, very important. How are you internalizing? People say that, yes, you can watch a video and learn more, but you can't learn more if you don't make a note of it, right? So there are some small nuances which gets the negative connotation, but largely I see it's all prevailing. Everybody gets a huge value of it, and be it organization, be it consultants, be it the government for that matter. Right? Everyone is talking about laying a lot of emphasis on that. I'll just take a pause. I guess Dr. Swapna wants to add something.
Not exactly,
Yeah.
but since you mentioned, I will quickly add to it. When you said, you know what, with diverted attention, because this is always a topic in psychology, is focused attention and diverted attention. So when we are talking about various Gen Z habits and I would say their behavior, we are finding their diverted attention. And with diverted attention, the negative point is we tend to be superficial, and we don't go deeper into any subject. And like I said in my earlier dialogue, when we have to make a profitable business, or when we have to make some business impact, certainly someday or other we have to go deeper. We just can't be superficial. So eventually that day will come. Eventually everybody will learn, and that's how we start getting focused. But with these things, yes, means I guess that's the addition to it.
Yeah. And on a lighter note, one of my client mentioned this, that that Arun, while we were growing up, our gurus were books. Nowadays, people guru is Google, right? So people stop, which is good, but at the same time, Google will not give you answer every time. That's where I say. And I happy to pick this other question from Vijay. I know we are just top of the hour and how the schedule looks like, but yes, this is definitely a big question. All of us experience it in a very different manner. Again, the client centricity is about on when you work from home in a hybrid culture, how do you make sure client consultant relationship come to the fore? I think the answer is very, very clear. There are many clients who expect me to be in their office, be in their team, depending on what project we are doing. At the same time, there are many clients who understand that, Arun, make sure your team comes to office twice a week, still captures all the data and work together. But I think the question comes here is the trust. Being the trusted advisor is first and foremost important. How do you really define the trust? How do you really build that trust and maintain it throughout the engagement is absolutely clear and absolutely important, right? So last 2 years have been those times where we did not choose to be in a hybrid environment, but that has been the reality. But I would say the whole ecosystem has been very supportive. I'm a firm believer. I'm a firm optimist who says that no matter what happens, things would always turn out to be good, right? So that's my take to it.
Thank you so much for that answer. I hope that was helpful. Now, since we are running short of time, we will be just taking one last question from Vijay. So he's asking in chat box, with increasing work from home and hybrid work culture, how do you see client consultant interaction changing in future? Anyone can go ahead.
Sure. Okay, since nobody else took the question, so I'll go ahead. See, with the remote environment, and I think Mr. Arun just touched upon this point that how even clients are more receptive towards the hybrid environment going forward, driven by the challenges that they could also not do anything around, right? I mean, nobody could do anything around COVID. They had to accept the way. In fact, I have seen businesses who were my clients who did not believe in work from home environment and all, and how their entire thought process has been changed, driven by the COVID, driven by the impact that COVID has created on the business and operational environment. So from that perspective, and looking at that, all of you are going to, increasingly represent the clients as well as the businesses going forward. And anyways, this generation, the Gen Z that we are talking about, is increasingly. So from a client and consultant perspective, we do not see any challenges until the communication is happening. And that communication can happen remotely through the virtual environment, or that could happen in an on-premise manner, being there in the client office itself. But having said that, until we make sure that communication is proper, the communication is happening timely, and all of us are aligned on the objectives very, very clearly, I personally do not feel that the impact is going to be negative in any way. In fact, a lot of consulting organizations actually saw an increase in numbers when the overall business environment was actually struggling or coping up with COVID, right? And that is a sheer indicator of how any kind of change in communication environment driven by remote working or hybrid working has not actually impacted the business of consultants or advisors. Yeah. And communication is one key pivot of the business that we do. So that is my personal opinion. Dr. Swapna, Mr. Arun, Mr. Govind, if you would like to add, please feel free to. Thank you.
Abhishek, I agree with you. I think our experience for last 2 years also had been the same. Even when there was a restriction on the physical movement, I think the interactions continued. And in fact, it continued much more seamlessly. A lot many platforms came, and we could relate. And generally, the consultation is sharing of thoughts, ideas, giving them ideas, and this absolutely can be done over this thing. And of course, as we go forward, it will be hybrid. It can't be that every time you sit at home or you work on this thing. There are some functions which need physical presence, like manufacturing, like quality control. They need physical presence. So there is going to be a mixed or a hybrid model. People are going to have, or companies are going to have either some people or some days, whichever way, differently. But I see a very few companies now where they will 100% revert back to physical working, unless they happen to be manufacturing companies or the companies where physical presence is must. Without that, you can't do.
Thank you so much, Abhishek sir, Govind sir, Arun sir, to touch that topic again and explain the question answer in more detail. I hope, Vijay, that answered your questions. And thank you, everyone, Swapna ma'am, Govind sir, Arun sir, Abhishek sir, for such insightful session. Now I request Sai Chandra to take over.
Thank you, Shraddha.
Just before you go on, Sai, I just want to make a point which I couldn't actually touch upon during the entire discussion. So what exactly will be changing at a business scenario? Okay, in learning and development, I feel systems thinking and design thinking should be part of the learning and development for Gen Z people. You cannot just make them learn on the particular technical aspect, but you have to make them feel connected through this process of large group interventions. So there are multiple processes where large group intervention is used to generate ideas and to evaluate ideas. So I always feel we always share marketing budget. So I as a senior person in the team, I feel contingency reserve also I should make share with my team, so they can fail while making an attempt. So I should give that psychological safety as a team leader to my Gen Z, I would say, team member. And with that psychological safety, yes, they would dare to take some kind of risk, and they will evaluate the risk, and that's how they will go about. And that's why the agile would say culture is becoming more popular, and that is the coaching culture also is coming into place, because earlier the coaching culture came into place because people were not able to manage the millennial team members, and now it is not about to manage, it is about the collaboration, and that's how the cultural or organizational behavior will change in future. Yeah, sorry to take that extra time.
Sure, ma'am. Okay. So, esteemed panelists and fellow students, it's an honor to deliver this vote of thanks on the very first panel of Sampreshan 2.0. On behalf of the teams Consulere and Spinmasters and our entire institute by extension, I would like to extend a hearty note of thanks to all the speakers for gracing us with your valuable time, with your insights and opinions on today's topic, that is redefining the strategies for Gen Z market today. We have been fortunate to have a panel of a very diverse strategy experts. The session was insightful and had a lot of key takeaways. And just to mention a few, we learned about various ways of engaging these tech-savvy Gen Z customers and how different strategies are employed by companies to cater to these needs, especially in a volatile market. You also talked about the need to nurture the entrepreneurial mindset of the young ones and the various sustainable initiatives taken by the companies to attract them too. You also discussed about companies taking strides to making the digital the hybrid mode work, and how the members of the industry have also upskilled themselves just to keep up with the Gen Z. We have seen how, the evolution of supply chain management, especially in the context of digitalization, and I'm sure all these key takeaways we'll all keep in our minds as we move ahead. So once again, I'd like to thank each and every member of the panel, and it has been our tribute to host all the panelists. And I'm also thankful for all the students for participating in the session and making it interactive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good luck to everyone.